Let's welcome our speakers, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, Ulrich is the first one to join us on the stage. Ulrich, just to remind you, CEO of FIWARE Foundation, and we have Christian Panzer, Head of Performance Optimization Management at Wienerberger. We have Charbel, Aoun, Smart Cities and Spaces Director, EMEA at NVIDIA. Welcome them. And the panel discussion moderator, Joe Appleton, Editorial Director and Media Relations at Be Smart City. I presume we have more than enough microphones. Yes, applause, please. Let's welcome our speakers. It's always motivating, inspiring. We're still not sure if everyone has had enough coffee to start the day with. Gentlemen, enjoy the discussion.
Thank you very much for that wonderful warm-up, and thank you, Ulrich, for the keynote speech. Very informative. Now we're going to move on. Everyone's been introduced already, pretty much. So I would like you all to kind of introduce yourself again, but explaining your roles in the context of resilience. So let's start with, Christian.
Thanks. My name is Christian Panzer. I'm Head of Performance Optimization at Wienerberger. And Wienerberger is known as a big brick and tile producer as well as pipes, so we are very strong in the building sector as well as in the infrastructure sector. Of course, for us it matters, the whole net zero emission buildings, all that part, which is of course a huge impact for urban resilience. On the one hand, on the other hand, just the examples we've seen here from flood management and all that is something which we are in, which we are actively driving as well and trying to really build solutions for that for you mentioned very nicely for the cities, but in the end it needs to be the end user and thus the citizen which can benefit from that, and that's the biggest challenge, of course.
Thank you very much. Ulrich, would you like to explain a little more? Does your headset work, or do you have a mic?
It's still working, yeah?
Fantastic.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, for me, resilience really is the ability of an organization, in this case, the ability of a city to handle changes in the environment. I think COVID-19 was an extreme example of such a change in the environment, and it limited the operation of cities a lot. We had to handle the lockdown, we had to handle, and we had to find other ways of communicating, managing the pandemic as such. I'm also a member of a curatorium of an organization called SORMAS. SORMAS is a software which has been designed to manage all pandemic-related information. It was created 9 years ago when there was an Ebola case in Nigeria, and now since 1 year it is brought into an open source ecosystem. Nearly all German health organizations are using it to collect all the data. And what we saw in this pandemic is that digitization definitely has the ability to help us to overcome at least part of the limitations of such a pandemic. And that's why in a lot of countries, Corona has been a boost for the adoption of digital solutions. We saw it in the schools, for example, using Teams or other modes of web conferences to continue with the classes just remotely. And there are a lot of other examples, and definitely digitization has the power to increase the resilience of cities, and these are just a few examples.
Thank you very much, Ulrich, for giving us an example from health and education. We've had infrastructure. Now, Charbel, where do you fit into this?
Everywhere. So I started my journey back in 2006, focusing on what used to be connected cities. And over the years, we've heard like 17 terms. And now we're going to talk about resilient. But for the last 5 years, I've been in NVIDIA. Does anybody know what's NVIDIA? Okay. So we are a company specialized in everything related to artificial intelligence, which you hear about today, generative AI, and so on. So we're the engine powering all this technological transformation. So what's happening in the market is mega trends that Ulrich touched on. You have urbanization, and this is important because it's related to resilience. this flood of people into concentrated urban spaces is creating constraint on infrastructure. So we're competing for everything. So more cannot be done. There's enough roads on the street, you cannot add more. So we gotta be more intelligent in how we use space we do. Second mega trend is digitization, and you talked about it. So we're turning the world into data. Everything is sensor, IoT, Internet of Things. So when you have that data deluge or that amount of data, what do you do with it? On its own, it has no value, unless you put analytics on it. And this is where AI comes in, because it has the ability to perceive, to detect, to understand, and to provide insight. Now, in terms of resiliency, where does that fit in? I think resiliency is about the city being able to detect, assess, react, and survive or recover from a disaster, which could be anything, could be COVID, could be flood, could be anything. So to do that, you need to look at technology, because today technology is allowing you to do things before things happen, during the event, and post-event. And there's a lot to talk about, I'm sure, but this is where we fit in.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, there weren't many hands up there for NVIDIA, so we do have a Q&A at the end. If you want to know more about it, please put your hand up and a microphone will come to you, and you can learn about NVIDIA. So let's start.
But Joe, may I just comment on the topic of urbanization, which you put first? Clearly, there's still a trend for urbanization in the developing countries. But what we see, for example, in Germany, what I experienced myself, that this trend is at least slowing down due to COVID. Because during COVID, we learned that also remote working is possible. And a lot of companies remained in this mode, allowing their employees to work from home. And a lot of these employees, especially younger people, especially people who are living in families with smaller kids, identify that the quality of life is sometimes higher in rural areas. They are not too far away from the urban centers, so that you can still reach it and use the theaters and all the offerings of larger metropolitan regions, but they are identifying the quality of life also in rural areas, under the assumption that there is sufficient connectivity. So you need to have fiber to the home and all this stuff. But this is at least a trend we are seeing in Germany during the last 2 years. Rural areas are fighting now to get the approval from the regional administrations to build more areas where houses can be built. It is still cheaper to live in rural areas. And this is at least a trend I see, that I would put it this way, that the urbanization is slowing down a bit. And for sure, in countries like Germany, 50% of the people are living in rural areas and not only in cities.
Perfect. Well, Christian.
Can I jump on that? Because I totally confirm that, and we see that in Austria as well. We see that in a lot of other European countries, at least I would say. Nevertheless, I think that's all what resilience is about, or urban resilience is about, that we also have in the urban regions some kind of the same feeling for younger families, etc., but still with the big challenge, affordability. And that's where technology, that's where digitalisation jumps in for me. And that's actually what we are working, because it's still, in a macroeconomic aspect, of course, better to have them in an urbanized world with less energy efficient, with higher energy efficiency for buildings, etc.
That's right.
So these are two trends we try to combine, but yeah, same problem, exactly.
Remote working certainly is absolutely fantastic. I go to the office twice a year, and that is 2 times too many. So let's have some landscape here. Can we define urban resilience in the context of today's rapidly changing technological landscape, and why is it important for cities? Did anyone understand that?
I think that, or at least for me, that's what I just tried to answer. For me, urbanization is key when it comes to how do we live and how much energy do we use for heating, cooling, etc. It's in an urbanized world less than in a rural area. But that's why we need to take care of all the challenges we've just seen before. Flood warnings, etc. That's something which is, of course, key and which is important. we do have with climate change much more heavy rainfalls, no rain at all. So this needs to be managed, and that's where technology and where digitalization jumps in.
Sure. Microphone.
Yes, sorry, important. I think we started by talking about resiliency is about the ability of the city to prepare, respond, adapt, etc. But if you translate that into actions, let's talk about disaster crisis management. If you have a flooding, right? If you have sensors, we saw a little bit earlier, we have the ability to, over time, when you accumulate data of the movement of water, of a river, of this, you allow the AI, for example, to create trends, anomalies, which allow you to predict. So we're moving from reactive to proactive. So now technology is bringing resiliency to the next level, which is about cognitive space management, right? This is now the next evolution of smart, is about ability. Now, when you incorporate into that the people element into it, social media sentiment, feeling, it's not anymore the sensor is a device. The human is a sensor. So that's an example. Another example would be the climate risk. Now, if you're able to integrate data coming from weather forecast and all the sensors, if you look at historical data of all of this, now we're doing a significant project with the European Commission. We're providing an infrastructure where we want to simulate the global warming of the whole planet, where we're taking data from around the world. You can imagine the compute capacity. If you take that at the micro level, which is a city level, if they have the data, you can feed it into models that allows you to predict and anticipate something happening. Now, those 2 minutes you can win, or 1 minute you can win, for those who live in disaster environment and flooding, is a critical moment. It's about saving life, it's about mobilizing people at the right time.
Ulrich, do you have anything to add, or shall I move on?
Yeah, I would like to focus again on the slogan here, digitization and decarbonization. And looking at really how digital solutions can help in the main areas where carbon is produced in the city context, which is for moving people from A to B, reducing the amount of individual used cars and increasing the amount of shared mobility within a city, which is then more and more also battery or hydrogen driven and not based on fuel combustion engines. And the second part is heating of the houses, where digitization can help to make buildings more energy efficient and also to optimize the way how energy is produced. So does it need to be produced in each single house using natural gas, for example, or can other modes of energy be used in central systems? And also the industry, which is taking place very often within cities, has its part, and there are large initiatives also to decarbonize industry organizations up to the point where the total carbon footprint of products is analyzed. And this is one of the first use cases in a Gaia-X-based solution called Catena-X. Maybe one of you have heard about Catena-X. It's the creation of a data space in the automotive industry. It started in Germany, but now a lot of other countries are also joining this initiative. And one of the use cases is to analyze the carbon footprint of all the different components of a car, starting with a raw material producer, third tier, second tier, first tier supplier, up to the OEM, and to optimize this value chain with a clear focus on reducing the carbon footprint.
For those interested in Catena-X, they do offer webinars, and I think the next one is in January, for those that want to know more about the automotive industry and how it's tackling it. Now, Charbel, did you have something to add?
I was going to ask Ulrich a question. So I think we can sit here and list a lot of use cases, and there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I agree with you. But the question that comes to my mind is, what's the return on investment on some of those projects? And like you, I've worked with a lot of cities, and I hope You represent cities. You can tell me if I'm making sense or not. There are certain projects, if technology is done to prove the power of technology, it has no use, in my opinion. If it's done to solve a problem that the city can afford to pay for it, it will fly. A lot of the use cases we see, and I'm not pointing any of what you said, but it made me think about when we talk about sustainability. So for example, I'm working on 2 projects. One is going to work, one is not going to work, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. But the first project is we have computer vision sensors, cameras, that we're able to look and analyze the traffic patterns, and linking it to the CO2 emission sensors, we're able to correlate the 2 together between the CO2 emission and the idling time on a traffic light. If we do it across the city, we're creating a real-time dynamic traffic congestion. If you overlay the healthcare respiratory emergency services data, we're running models, AI models, to draw conclusions. So to me, as a project where I'm seeing it happening, there is a lot of merit for that. There is a lot of value that could come out of it. On the second hand, another project is, we call it visual pollution. All vehicles of a city are equipped with sensors and cameras to detect graffiti, garbage thrown on the street, broken pavement, and so on. All kind of pollution, right? We call it visual pollution. Smoke, whatnot, whatever, think about it. And the idea is to take a screenshot of that specific event, with geotag it and send it immediately to the right public service people so they can send somebody to deal with it. When you look at it, you ask yourself, okay, how am I going to fund it? And that's the conversation. As a technological capacity, we proved the project. The POC is done. Proof of concept is done. There's nothing to prove. The question is, how do we finance it? And that your example made me reflect on that, because this is at the heart of resiliency, right? Resiliency is about cost control, right? It's not just about, hey, I have a pure air or I manage the flooding. It's also about sustainable project. It's about capacity. It's about skills. It's about in-house the city's capability to manage these big ideas we're throwing at them. Anyway, this is what I wanted to think.
No problem. Christian, you've been quiet. What would you like to add?
I totally confirm, and I think that's also from a Wienerberger side, we do see a lot of challenges. We do see also solution for these challenges, but who is the one who is paying for it, and who is the one who is able to afford for that? And that's why as we do have all the components to build also big residential buildings, for example, for us, the next step was to get into the operation mode, where we, at least with all the digitalization, with AI, with IoT, we're saving the OPEX, and thus we're reducing the total cost of ownership. The investment cost will be, in order to achieve all the benefits, of course higher, but in terms of total cost of ownership, it will be cheaper. And that's the affordability, but it's a new business model, and that's what the market needs to be open for. Exactly, yeah.
Sorry, I was just reminding you to use your microphone. So with that in mind, and the financing side of things, when it comes to cities investing in innovations, it's always a bit of a risk. So what do you think, who are the key stakeholders, and how do you get them on board? Because, for example, in London recently, you saw that the Mayor Sadiq Khan tried to increase the size of the low emission zone, but it was met with a lot more resistance than people would have expected. So how are you getting citizens on side to agree with these things, especially when it comes to, let's say, data and sensors and cybersecurity as well? Who wants to take it?
Yeah, the main stakeholders, in my point of view for this point, are the mayor and the city council, because they are who is deciding about the city's budget, how the money is spent. And we are still a bit away from a situation which I'm pretty sure we will have in the future, that in the budget of a city, there will not only be investment for the physical infrastructure, for streets, for water pipes, for electricity and so on, but we will have a cost position also for the digital infrastructure. I'm pretty sure about this. Be it tax financed or be it financed by business models, that's the main question for me. And what we see around the world today is that a lot of these implementation projects, some of them are just pilots, are financed by public funding. enabling the cities to do such projects. And it is very important during such projects to have an idea how to sustainably operate such solutions. And here, for me, the topic of data spaces comes or becomes a clear role, and the ability also to monetize data. Because data are very often having a value, and we need to come up with, and there are solutions to do such monetization. Let me give you a very simple example. When talking about smart parking, a lot of cities are working on the topic of smart parking, either putting sensors onto the different parking lots, using cameras to identify via image recognition where is a free parking lot, or and then to come up with a digital solution in an app or directly integrated with the navigation system in the cars to navigate the driver not to his or her target destination, but to the closest free parking lot, avoiding traffic searching for free parking lots. And there are cities where up to 30% of the traffic and 30% of the air pollution is created by cars searching for free parking lots. And now coming to the business model. When it's possible, I'm 10 minutes away from the Sofitel hotel, and the most ideal parking lot is just in this moment getting free. And it's possible for me to even reserve this parking lot. I'm more than willing to pay €2 or 10 zloty more for this additional service based on data. And this is a very simple example how data can be monetized. But we need such ideas, we need to implement such solutions, and such solutions need to be accepted and adopted by the citizens.
I'm sorry, Ulrich, I just have to say that when it comes to monetizing data, a lot of people that I speak to use that exact same example, but I've never heard another one. We've got two people here that would like to jump in, Christian and Charbel. Do you want to fight for it?
No. I totally agree. It's the mayor, it's the city council, but I think it's also the end user. And the end user on both sides. And on the building side, definitely, if it's the end user in a single-family house, it's me, you, etc., or a facility management in a big residential, commercial, whatever building. But also on the infrastructure side, we faced, and I can give you a clear example that in the city of Mönchengladbach in Germany, there's this river Niers, which had a lot of floodings. And with digitalisation, we managed to have really a flood control in terms of not only having alerts, but also really controlling the flow of the river using the natural bassins without building new additional bassins which would have a lot of investments. That's fine, that's a solution that works, that really saved in that respect also CapEx, not only OpEx, but it would not be possible if not the user, the guy sitting there maintaining, controlling that all, would accept the system. So it's on the one hand, of course, always the budget in the city council, but it's also the one who is controlling it, which you need to convince, which you need to really take along the journey. How has his daily life changed then?
Fantastic. So that's more about the stakeholder. But Charbel, you were going to tell us how to monetize data?
I will, but I want to say something first. I think we confuse how cities work today versus what we want them, how we want them to work. Because cities today work in a very simple term. A mayor comes into governance with two ticket items, CapEx and OpEx, predefined by the historical years before. So he has limited money that's already allocated to things that is already identified 4 years ago. So the innovation is not the perfect go-to tool for cities because they're not paid and measured on innovating. Oops, we were trying a new traffic system and the city went down. In a startup, in a company like mine, if I try something, failed, they said, okay, move on, next. You cannot do that in a city. So this is a reality we cannot deny. Second one is, you may be willing to pay €2, but I can bet you there will be 10 people not willing to pay the €2. And that's the issue. So to me, the number one stakeholder should be the citizen. Because everything a city is about people, right? Whether they're permanent citizen or visiting citizen, it's about people. What do I care about what's going on behind the scene in the city of Warsaw? I'm visiting here, like yesterday I arrived. What I care is my experience I exhibit in those 24 hours. If I enjoy it because the traffic, now how hard it is for them to make the traffic, I don't see it. Now the question is, how do we create that transparency between what's happening behind the scene, so perception is reality, right? This is the world of cities, which you will tell us about more than I, but that's what I learned. Now, how do you monetize data? Now, the principle of, I'll give you an example. I'm working on a project that is national level, 25,000 cameras that are capturing everything they see. And they're capturing around 25 different traffic violations. And the outcome after a year and a half of this project, they are 25% rollout of the 20,000 cameras. They have reduction 60% of death, etc. And they have a significant amount of control of traffic violation reduction. Eventually that will saturate. But now the question is, what do we do with the data? So we know we've done this project because we solved a problem that we have today. And the problem today was we have a high number of accidents, high number of fatality, fix it. So they did something that the ROI is very clear because the ticket's value pays for the device. In a public sector environment in a city, there is something else than ROI. There is return on votes. What does it do for my voter? What does it do for my constituent? This is what I work, because we were talking about Black Swan, you and me earlier. Like, today, cities do go find money in two cases, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Case number one is, it's a big problem that everybody is screaming about it, and it's an egg on the face of whoever is in charge. Come on, guys, I'm being embarrassed, slaughtered here because we're having 25 accidents per month on this roundabout. Fix it. They will find money and fix it. Or they can save money from a project and invest it in a project that creates value. I did not find any other, or they get a grant from the EU, that's different, but a running operation. So the question is, how do you monetize it? In that traffic example that I'm giving you, now they're looking at saying, okay, now I have the data. Instead of only seeing the vehicle's behavior, why don't I track anonymously the vehicles across all cameras across the city so I can predict traffic and offer it as a service to the traffic department? Why don't I give this to the insurance company so I can talk about speed, average speeds, accident? So now you're monetizing the data. You put it for a purpose, and that data that solve that problem, but it can solve 9 other problems. There's no demand for it. You have to create the demand, and you have to figure a way to sell it. Now you're moving into SaaS, software as a service, or data as a service. Nobody paid for I didn't pay for the infrastructure to get the benefit. I paid to get that benefit. On the back, you're going to sell me a separate benefit. Anyway, so that's...
I was just going to say, because we're running a little bit short on time, so before I get to my final question, I'd like to open to the floor if anyone has any questions for our panelists.
That's a perfect moment, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone?
We have one over here. It's on its way.
Coming.
Christos Chansaros from the Technical University of Munich. I'm one of the 2 managing directors there from the Venture Lab Built Environment. I would question the title of this panel. Are we talking about urban resilience or urban adaptation? So resilience is a state to get back where we were. So how can we train the cities or learn to become adaptive to what is changing and not offering a parking lot, but maybe to avoid driving by car in the first place?
Okay, so that sounds like perhaps an innovation procurement or trying to change the mindset of cities question. Who would like to take it? Okay,
so
Charbel.
I agree with you. I think, but as a technologist, I look at it slightly different. To me, they are continuation of each other. In the past, we used to analyze data, historical data, to draw conclusion for the future. And that's why I refer to cognitive environment today. Today, we have the ability in real time to do both, if we have the right infrastructure in place. The question is, can the city do that? Technologically, we can, but that's not the question because it's not good enough. Can the city benefit from this technological capability to adapt or predict or to this? Now, the transformation from what it is today and what will be tomorrow, vehicle or no vehicle, as an example, like changing the thinking of how we procure or deliver services, I don't think, in my personal experience working with cities since 2006, I think very few cities are thinking this way. At least that's what I can say.
Yeah, I would say I partly agree, because when it comes to parking and when it comes to driving, I agree with you. When it comes to building, we do have a completely different environment than where we have been. We now have not only a heating demand, we have a cooling demand, we have additional demands, we have some kind of retrofit which we also need to provide and which we also need, or which we ask for as citizens as well. So what we need to do is to use digitalization, use technology, to not use more energy for providing more comfort, more services. And I think that's some kind of the challenge we face for resilience as well.
Did that answer your question? Perfect. Okay. Is my mic still working? Yes. My timer has jumped to give us 4 extra minutes, or is it for something else?
Well, it's just organizer generosity, I suppose, for the opening panel.
Okay. So do we have any more questions? Oh, one more.
Yes, thank you. My question is, can you use digitization and the big data to change the behavior of citizens in the city to analyze the data, to maybe use more public transport, create PNR parking spots in places where you see lots of cars moving? So if you have some examples for that.
This might be an Ulrich question.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, and I very briefly gave you one example, this example of the small people movers, autonomously driving people movers. Such an environment is not able to work without a digital platform, without digitization. We see it when using Bolt or Uber. So when I came here, I used Uber, and Uber wouldn't work without digitization. And when we are able to make going from A to B in using shared mobility or public transportation as comfortable and as affordable as using my own car, then we are able to change the behavior of the citizens. I'm pretty convinced about this. When I've been last time in Delhi, for example, there are more than 400,000 Uber drivers in Delhi, and there it is already as cheap as using your own car. And I spoke to a lot of people who said, I've sold at least my second car because I'm more and more using Uber. I don't have to drive myself. Here in Uber, there are still drivers in there. We are not talking about autonomously driving. So there is a change in the behavior of at least some of the people, and I'm pretty sure that digitization has the potential to change the behavior of the people. But it must be attractive for them, otherwise they will not use it.
For those who've been in Delhi, whatever the price of Uber, I will not drive my car.
Okay.
But to answer your question, I like your question, and I believe yes, because it goes back to the point of citizens don't see what's happening. So exposing data, giving them choice. So if I know that coming from the airport to this hotel, I have 5 choices. I need them accessible. I don't need to go spend 15 minutes on my phone looking for the options. That makes it impossible for me. I pick the first one in front of me. I'm a lazy person. But if you make those options in a way that are accessible to people, that the second I look, I know, listen, I can go to the train and I'm saving X dollars and X CO2 footprint, and I'm taking, you know, if I have those, London is great at doing that. Many other European cities are great at doing that. If you give me option, number one. Number two is, I need benefit. What's in it for me to be bothered? This is the reality, right? This is how people think. Why would I go and put solar panel? Why would I pay £7,000 to put a solar panel? It has to hit my pocket, right? And so on and so forth. And everything, this is reality. We cannot just pretend in an ideal world that all is awesome and you have the social responsibility of doing it. If it was like this, we would have all done it.
Perfect, thank you very much. And Christian?
I also agree to that, and I would just add one more thing with kind of digitalization. It's changing the user behavior maybe, but also digitalization can help you. For example, for buildings, it's just about I want to have the comfort. If there is a management system behind, considering all what you just mentioned, reacting on different price signals, etc., it must not be the user who will change his behavior. The user wants to have heating, cooling, lighting, but nothing else. whatever the management system does behind. And that's the kind of digitalization which we can use and drive for that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would like to take another question, but we're running very short on time. I have one final question I would have liked...
Extremely short.
Yeah, this is a very quick one, don't worry. I'd like to give it to Ulrich. What is your vision for the future of urban resiliency in a digitally transformed world?
Yeah, clearly, as I explained before...
We have 20 seconds, so keep it concise.
I am convinced that digitization has a potential to increase the quality of life of citizens living in a city and also to reduce the cost of operating a city, and with this, making digitization affordable.
Thank you very much. We have 4 seconds left, so I'd like to thank my panelists and thank you for listening.